Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Welcome to probably one of the noisiest places you could ever be in to do a podcast.
I'd say so.
The 2021 Summer NAMM Show here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're actually on the trade show floor, which we didn't think was going to happen, but this is very cool. With us today, Jessica Powell, who is the co-founder and CEO of, I got to tell you, probably one of the coolest companies I have ever seen. She gave me a little demo before we started the podcast. You know, I've worked in the studio. Anybody that's been in the studio knows what stems are. We all deal with it. This is a whole new level, but it's amazing. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is great. When I say that, you have developed, is this a software program? Is that what this is?
I mean, at its core, it's an AI technology.
It's an AI technology.
And then we have software that makes it available, yeah.
So basically what you can do is you can take a song, and in simplistic terms, you can dissect it. Okay, first of all, who came up with this idea and how and why?
Well, so my co-founder and I were living in Tokyo. This was years ago, and we both really got into karaoke. And the thing that always killed us a little bit was, one, that we were both really into punk, and we couldn't karaoke to like Gang of Four. We really wanted to karaoke to old punk songs. We never could find it. And that was fine. We went ahead and did the classics that you can get at a karaoke place. Right. But then even then, you're usually karaokeing to really cheesy Midi versions that aren't, they don't sound anything like the original, and that takes something away from the experience. And so we just started to play around over the years with the idea of, well, wouldn't it be cool, and it was just an idea, like, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually break a song apart into its stems so that you could karaoke to any song in the world? Now, that's not what we ended up building. We don't have a karaoke service or anything like that, but that was really the root of the idea of how could we break up a song? And when we started to get into it, we started to say, oh, wow, we can do this, and how can we use it actually to help musicians? Everyone on the team is a musician too, and we were like, how can we do this to actually help musicians make more money for their work?
Right. So what started out as something that was very simple is really turned into a technology that at the very least is something that so many people can use. Is this something that is end user friendly for them to really dissect and figure out how to do it? And we're going to get more into the details of what it can be used for, but is this something that pretty much anybody can use?
I mean, theoretically, anyone could use it. It's
right.
Incredibly simple. As you saw, you upload a song, and then, a minute later, you get the stems back. And all it requires is knowing how to essentially hit the button to stem it.
So let's back up just for a second. You talk about having a song, and within a minute or less, you can literally dissect it.
Right.
So the drums, the guitar, the bass, the vocals, everything without any bleed over in less than a minute.
Right.
That's amazing.
And the only thing I should say is that the reason I said theoretically very easy, the technology to use from the end user perspective, like you said, is very easy. What we're careful on is we don't actually make the technology available to everyone in the world, right? We work with musicians, labels, publishers. It was really important to us that we not just give anyone access such that in the end that you all of a sudden have some 16-year-old kid in their bedroom ripping off everyone's songs for their own use.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. So obviously it's designed for the independent artist, but in the demonstration you you played for me before the show. It was a very well-known, international, successful recording artist. So do you need to go out and get the clearances on that type of material before you can go in and create these stems?
The folks that have access to our platform are all rights holders. So it could be a major label, it could be a publisher, and so forth. So they own the rights to their songs, so they're creating stems. The demo I showed you was simply a demo. I would not release that publicly.
Right.
When we do public demos, we use music that we've cleared. There's no issue in terms of the platform, because if a label is going on, they are creating stems for their own songs.
Let's talk about the independent artists for a minute. How is this a viable tool for them? I would think it's very layered. There's a lot of different platforms and outlets you could put this on. Give us some examples of what that independent artist can do with these stems.
Sure. So for our on-demand platform, right now, we make that available to folks that have a large number of stems to create on a regular basis. So that tends to be labels and publishers. For songwriters, independent artists, they tend to come to us directly. We are working on something for them specifically, so that they will have something that is, the right price for them, that's accessible. They don't need to have a subscription to a service. They probably just want to stem a couple of songs. So
right.
we're working on something that's very much designed for them. But right now, if an independent artist comes to us, we just happily stem their songs for them, and as a kind of a one-off, if you will. And they can just go to our website and contact us, and we get back to them within the day, if not a couple hours, with their stems. And where we tend to see a lot of inquiries come in is from on the independent artist side, is they're very interested in sync. I think is probably one of the biggest uses. So many artists don't have their stems, or they don't have the instrumental. Instrumental, of course, is not a stem, but we sort of call it that as shorthand.
Right.
So we get a lot of requests for instrumental and a cappella, because artists will have recorded songs and now are realizing that there's a huge industry on the sync licensing side, and that if they're armed with their instrumentals, they can actually go out and take advantage of that. And I think that what I expect to see even more in the future is not just requests for instrumentals, but for full stem sets, because I think we are already seeing in the industry increasing use cases for stems, right? Spatial audio is built off the back of stems. Adaptive music, which is music that changes as you are, say, running, where it's beyond just a BPM shift. You actually see other changes built on stems. So there's so many use cases that are emerging that all artists really should have their stems.
Let's talk about spatial audio for a minute. Let's define that for us.
So spatial is not my area of expertise, so someone will listen to this and be like, Jessica just said 5 things wrong. But I think the most layperson-friendly way to think about it is almost to think about it from the experience side of it, right? Which is you and I are sitting in a living room. Clearly we're not. We're at NAMM.
No, definitely
it is a
not.
very large living room.
If this was a living room, we
I would
got
run
a lot
away.
of friends.
I'd probably
yeah.
run away. Ed. But that would be where I'm sitting there and I'm just having a much richer audio experience. I hear the vocals coming at me from one angle and the drums from another. It's done well.
So
really
almost what we
experience.
used to call, back in my days, we'd almost call that the quadraphonic experience. But this is even more so. This is even richer than that.
Right, and what you're seeing is that Apple, Tidal, and probably a few others that I'm missing have already announced, having audio available in spatial. And it's a very cool and different way to experience a song.
Is it because of being able to use the use of stems that you can do this?
Well,
Has that technology has not been there before? Or?
Well, imagine you need to, so if you want to have different parts of the song playing in different parts of the room, so to speak. It doesn't actually have to physically be a different part of the room, but if you want to have, because it could be in your headphones happening, right? You want to be able to work with the stems to enhance that experience, right? To fine tune things. Because also what can happen, my understanding, I've never built like a spatial mix, but my understanding from talking to audio engineers is that when you're creating that spatial mix, you are also working with the stems. You're changing the song a little bit, because if you just tried to do a one-to-one translation of the final mix, it doesn't come through in the best way. I think the artist might be disappointed in how their song is rendered. So I think a lot of work goes into really, I guess, optimizing and improving that song for that specific experience.
Right, gotcha. Mono versus stereo. If I have like old music and it's basically a 2-track, is it still something that can be translated?
Well, that's the question. If it's a mono track,
yeah.
Where are you getting the stems? You'd have to get them from us or from someone, right? My point is that if you have a song from the 1930s, you can't break that up, and so you need a technology that creates those stems. What's also interesting is You can look at monotrack. You can talk about, you can even start talking about multi-track where you only have the analog tapes or the tapes are degraded. You have that same problem where we're talking about the 1930s or a song even from the 80s, right? What's also interesting to me is you also have that problem with the songs of the future. Because if you think of, there's a lot of attention right now around AI song creation, right, of creating songs from AI. It's still a very small field. It's not replacing human-generated music. But that's also interesting because if you create a song from AI where the AI is training on, say, heavy metal, and then it creates a heavy metal song, you also have no stems for that. So there's just an interesting, almost full circle thing of whether you're talking about a song that's going to be made in 2050 from a bunch of bots or a song from the 1930s, neither one of those have their stems.
Sitting with us here on the trade show floor at the 2021 Summer NAMM with obviously hundreds, if not thousands, of our closest friends. Jessica Powell, who is the co-founder and CEO of Audioshake.
You're listening to the business side of music.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Let's talk about for a moment the idea of, we talked about sync. So when I watch a home improvement show or a cooking show, you're always hearing different types of background elements. Is this something that, if someone says, I need a guitar part. I love this song, I love your song, but I need just the guitar part. That's possible to do with this and be able to send them that file exclusively.
Right. My understanding of the sync business is that the highest request comes in the form of instrumentals. They want to be able to run the instrumental. They want to be able to play with, for example, lowering the vocals or switch when say the actor comes on screen. You have this song playing, and then you're going to remove the vocals entirely because you want the viewer's attention to be on the person speaking, not the song, but you still want to maintain the mood of that music, right? And so that, I think the biggest driver in the sync world tends to be instrumentals followed by a cappella. But however, I think when you get into certain kinds of production on the commercial side, for example, the music supervisors really do like to play with the stems. So they might even remove a stem, or they might increase the volume or the energy of a particular stem. So for example, we work with production service companies as well as labels and publishers. And they've also created stems for their libraries because for example, there's one company we work with, very large and reputable, that has they provide to all of their clients instrumentals and acapellas, but they never had the full stem sets. So we're creating the full stem sets for them so that particularly on these higher end sync requests, they're able to furnish all the stems and not just the instrumental.
When we talk about libraries, is this something that Audioshake is building internally yourself, or are you looking to provide a service for other people to build their own libraries, or a bit of both?
Right. Right now, we are simply there as a tool to help rights holders build out their own libraries.
Okay.
We have had some of them asking us for help of thinking beyond that, right? So how could we, in the longer term, help them get even more reach for their stems beyond just what they get off of their own site or their own, say, sales teams. But right now, we're very focused on getting people the stems and letting them start to make money from or more money from their work in new ways.
Do we see a copyright issue here? I mean, and maybe this isn't your field of expertise, but when you start dissecting songs like that, does it still retain its organic copyright? The owner of the song doesn't have to go out and create more legal paperwork to protect their interests when it gets out there.
Right. I mean, it doesn't touch us, so to speak, in the sense of we work with rights holders, and so we're not licensing any of this content on. We're not focusing on, what happens with that track after we've created it. However, I think the whole field of once you can separate stems, and more importantly, in the future, as we start to see more and more experiences built on stems, so not just sync licensing, not just spatial, but what about stems as NFTs? What about stems as a building block on, say, a gaming platform, right? What if when you start to think of if you think of being able to take music down to like the molecular level where everything's atomized, and that with the artist's permission, if they want their what if you could throw yourself into a duet with Ariana Grande on TikTok, or if you could, there was a social app that allowed you to mash up songs and play with the stems. Once you really start getting into all these new uses of stems, I think it opens up really interesting copyright questions because, and this is me freelancing here again, this is not my field, though I started off actually my career at CZAC in Paris on the right side, so I find it fascinating. If you had a publishing credit, for example, on a song, you're the guitarist, right? And let's say that the singer got 80%. I'm making up these numbers. I don't know what the traditional ones are.
Right.
80% because their vocals are so iconic. They're kind of the front person of the band, right? They got the bulk of that credit. But then all of a sudden, your guitar your guitar solo is an NFT, or it's your guitar solo being used. What does that do to that existing? I mean, the existing contract is the existing contract, right? You probably can't do much about that, but what about future contracts? How do people start to look at credits?
Because if you use just the guitar solo and no other part of the song,
right,
who actually retains the rights to that?
Right, and I imagine, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine that legally it's whatever's in the existing contract. However, philosophically and morally, that doesn't feel entirely right. And I would think that would affect future contracts. Like once you know that your music is going to be split up in all these different ways, how do you then think about those different shares of those different parts of that music?
It's almost as if, and we've seen this in the past, and from my record label days, when digital downloads came out, the record business was not really prepared for that. Now we've got something that technology is there, and the legal/corporate paperwork, it needs a little bit of time to catch up, I would think, with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm for stems, but I think there's a couple things happening. I remember when YouTube came about, and the initial reaction from people was that, the musicians didn't necessarily want their music on YouTube, right? They felt like it was, well, they not just felt, it was infringing content that they were not being paid for. And now, flash to today, and everyone's music is on YouTube. The artists are being paid. They're not happy about the rev share. But no one, I think, questions anymore, let's say, or a few people question the marketing value of having that, of being present on, say, social platforms and everything. Again, whether the revenue share split is fair is a separate debate, right? But the actual marketing value of it, or the promotional value of it, I think is accepted wisdom. I think in the same way that when you think about stems, that today if you went to certain artists, particularly legacy artists, they might say, nope, I created this song and I put it out into the world this way. I don't want you to split it open, right?
Right.
Which I think is completely fair, right? If you went to Van Gogh and said, what if we just pull out this one sunflower? What do you think? Probably wouldn't like it either. And I think we have to respect that. That's why when Audioshake started, we said we're going to work directly with the rights holders and work with either the musicians directly or with the people that are representing their music and representing their interests that are going to liaise with them to decide what to do. But I think in the future what you'll see is that as all these opportunities for stems open up, I think artists themselves, I think already more contemporary artists and younger artists are very into this idea of how do you get me as great as reach and as much money, right, for this art that I've created, and a way to even to show more facets of that artistry as well, because you're able to isolate certain components.
Let's talk about the rights holder of the music. How do you get that cleared from your end? Someone comes to you and says, hey, I've got this song, or I've got this EP, or I've got this album. What do they need to do to prove to you that they're the rights holder?
So we don't deal on that side with it, because we vet everyone that's on our platform. If an independent artist comes to us, then yes, we check it out, and that's not too hard to vet, right? Because the artists are coming to you. You can see if they have a website. It's almost more of almost like an identity verification, right? If Bob Bender comes to me and says, I have this song, it's not too difficult usually to make sure that Bob Bender actually owns that song. And again, when we build out an indie artist-focused experience, we'll have more things built in algorithmically, right? Content recognition, those kinds of things that'll help us determine it. In terms of the platform that the labels and the publishers use, we vet everyone that goes onto the platform. So, and then once they're on the platform, they can do what they can then create their songs. If you tried to do content recognition on every single song, I think it would be difficult, because if, say, a major label uploaded a song, and then that song had 15 other rights tied to it, you would kind of break the whole thing. And so what's been kind of neat is that the labels and the publishers, everyone's sort of just agreed that everyone's going to play nice on this, because they understand that if, for example, a request comes in through a publisher for a sync opportunity, and yes, there's master's rights, like there's a label involved with that. There's also the publishing rights. The publisher is going to create that instrumental, right? And then that music is going to be used, it benefits the label as well. Or that instrumental request will come into the sync team on the major label side or the label side.
Right.
They may create the instrumental. But it's kind of like that expression of rising tide lifts all boats, or however it goes. I think everyone sees the value in it. There isn't effective content recognition technology today that would return, these are exactly who the label owners are, these are exactly who the publishing owners are, send a notification out to all of them. No one would be able to actually make use of the technology if you did that. And so instead, what we've done is we've taken the approach of, we're going to make sure you're a rights holder. That to come onto the platform, to have a subscription to our platform, we're going to make sure that you really should be there. Could you theoretically stem a song that doesn't belong to you? That's possible. I think the incentive...
But then you as the individual doing that, you're opening up a whole can of worms that you really don't want to deal with.
Right, and not only that, this is not like a YouTube thing. There'd be a whole paper trail tied to your name that you created the song. Everyone in your company would see that you created that song. It would be highly problematic. So I think the right incentives or disincentives are there that's not going to happen. Further down the line, we'll also have fingerprinting on those stems, and so if someone were to do that, then yes, it could be detected in the system. But again, I think never say never, because if anything you create, someone will find a bad way to use it. But I think it's highly unlikely that we would see it abused in the way we've provided it, in comparison to if we created consumer software and handed it to you, and you could use it just like you could use, say, Pro Tools. Absolutely, you would see stems everywhere. And I think that's the other component, just to add on to that, is this is already the world we're moving into. Stem piracy is already huge,
I
absolutely
never
huge.
would have even considered stem piracy as a valid thing.
Right, and yet, what do you think all of those TikTok remixes, all the stuff you hear on SoundCloud, those are built off of pirated stems. So I think that, even though we're saying, probably today Led Zeppelin may not want its stems out there in the world, those stems are already out there.
Right.
And we're only going to see more of them. And so as the industry, I think you can look at it and say, all right, well, are we going to fight this and just try and go after and sue every single person that's pirated stems, which we all know how that went with Napster, right? The industry spent 10 years fighting that stuff. Or do you want to create an iTunes, right? Do you want to provide high quality stems that your artists are actually happy with and that you can make money for, right? Because you're in control of that content. And I think we're already seeing there's just a very different perspective from the industry now about stems than I think if we tried to do this 5 years ago, they would have been like, oh, this is cool, we'll use it for instrumentals for sync. And they wouldn't necessarily think beyond that. Whereas now I think they're seeing that not only are those immediate opportunities today in things like spatial or sync licensing, but that there's this huge world of remixes and other new experiences that we haven't even entirely seen yet, built on stems. And I think people are remixes is so obvious, right? If you're sitting on a lot of catalog, you want to be able to introduce that song to a new audience. And so being able to remix a song and reinvent it and breathe new life into it is a great way to take content that you've already paid for, right? And get it out to new audiences. So that's actually a huge use case that we see on the platform.
Here at the NAMM Show, Summer NAMM Show 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee, Jessica Powell, who is the co-founder and CEO of Audioshake.
You're listening to the business side of music.
What does it take to succeed in country music? Hi, this is Candy O'Terry, your host for Country Music Success Stories.
And this is JC Don Valeris, your Music City mentor. Our Nashville-based podcast takes you into the homes and onto the back porches of country music icons.
And the stories they tell us just might inspire you to make your country music success story come true.
Check out Country Music Success Stories on your favorite podcast platform.
And subscribe today.
Since 1963, Korg has been creating new experiences in music and performance. That is what drove the creation of some of Korg's most legendary products, such as the Poly 6, the M1, the Electribe, the Triton, the Minilogue, the Kronos, Wave State, Op 6, and most recently the Nautilus, which is what we have here in our studio. Korg is dedicated to creating new, innovative, and uncompromising instruments which maintain the highest quality to inspire music makers, past, present, and future. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products and start creating new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
I want to talk about this revenue stream because what you said before the break, this is a whole new revenue stream field for the independent artist. So with that being said, how does the independent artist get involved with Audioshake? What is that process that they need to go through?
Right now, it's very simple. If an independent artist comes to us through our website, it's audioshake.ai, we create the stems for them. And it's very, very simple and straightforward. It will be even more simple in the future in the sense that we will have a site for them where they can create their stems and they can listen to them first. They can choose, whether to purchase them. We always let people listen first because occasionally the AI doesn't do a good job and we never want to promise that it's 100% perfect. So you should get to listen before you decide, particularly for an independent artist, that sometimes can be a big investment, right? And so you want to make sure that they're really happy and excited about what they're getting. So they just come to us on the website, and then they send us their song. We create the stems, and that's that. We don't take a royalty cut. We don't. So
they're just paying a fee, subscription fee, I guess?
Not even subscription, right?
Okay.
If you just need one song stemmed or even an album stemmed, we just create the stems for you, and you retain all your rights. It's very transactional. What we didn't want to do was add more complication to an already very complicated industry.
Right.
And again, I think in the future when we build the indie artist experience, we will have different kinds of payment approaches to make sure it's really accessible to people because everyone's kind of in a different place in terms of what they can afford. And I would hate as a business if we were only serving really high-end clientele or really wealthy independent artists.
Right. Gotcha. And once again, how can they find you?
Audioshake.ai.
Audioshake.ai. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
A wealth of information in a very noisy room.
Yes, very noisy.
The business side of music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The business side of music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Never had one lesson.
You're out. Finished. Expelled.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.